All right. How's everyone doing? Testing out a new mic currently, so let me know if you guys can hear my voice clearly. Go ahead and type in the chat box if you guys can hear me. Nice, got some people coming in live. This is good. This is good. I just mentioned I was testing out a new microphone, so if you guys can hear me, let me know if you guys can hear me clearly in the chat, real quick. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started once I get confirmation that you guys can hear my microphone properly. Perfect. Alrighty, loud and clear. All right, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and get started because we're gonna go ahead and restream this. So it's gonna be on live replay. So if you have any friends or anyone you know that may want to watch it, go ahead and share this link with them afterwards. It'll be going out as well later on. So we're just gonna hop straight into it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Josue Deloye. I am a Haitian American entrepreneur based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. So we're going to go ahead and hop straight into the presentation today. Let me actually go ahead and switch this screen for you guys. So the main topic is going to be today is going to be fear. And I think that it's a pretty timely presentation just with because of what's all going on in the world nowadays and everything that we're experiencing. I think that we all can agree that it's a very fearful time for many people. So let me go ahead and get the screen on for you guys so we can go ahead and hop into it. Thank you guys so much for all of you who are here for supporting and for coming to hear what I have to say about these topics. I'm pumped. I'm really excited. So thank you guys again. And we're going to hop straight into this bad boy. Alrighty. So let me go ahead actually, and let's go ahead and take off the presentation mode. Let me see. Perfect. All right. So what is the purpose of Sunday with Josue? So in short, the purpose overall of this live stream is to essentially educate on the topics of mindset, business, and content creation. Now, the reason why we're talking about these topics is because mindset is the first step for any type of effectual action. If you're an athlete, if you are a business person, entrepreneur, etc., without having the proper mindset, you're not going to be able to be effectual and move through life properly. We're going to go ahead and put it in this form. I know it's a bit smaller, guys, but I'm not able to see the chat without it unless I can figure out a way to do it on mobile. You know, good old first timers, technical difficulties. So I'm happy you guys are, sticking with me through this. But that's another reason why I want to go ahead and make it alive, because I want to showcase my journey. I want to show that I'm not perfect either, right? That I stumble, that I fall. And I want to show that in spite of lack of perfection, you can still have a rather good outcome. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get on mobile here because I realize that I have it set up in a certain way for it to function best full screen. So essentially, that's the main purpose of this show. So first topic is that of fear. Now, with any type of discussion, especially in the educational intellectual sphere, it's very important that we have a standardized and established definitions. So what exactly is fear? Well, dictionary.com defines fear as a distressing emotion aroused by impending danger, evil, pain, etc. Whether the threat is real or imagined, the feeling or condition of being afraid. That's the definition of fear. Now, there are two key points about this definition that I want to go ahead and point out and emphasize. The first of which is that technically, fear is just an emotion. If we think about decision making from a logical standpoint and data points, and we think about, should I or should I not do X, Y, Z? Should I talk to this person in a platonic or romantic sense? Should I make this business pivot and seize this new business opportunity? We can think about those things, and if we think about the data points that goes into that decision-making process, emotion is part of it, especially intuition, but emotion in and of itself does not necessarily have to be a point that we value heavily. And so just because you're afraid does not mean you're going to get hurt. And even more so, just because you're afraid does not mean you shouldn't take action. There are many and countless examples of situations in which people are placed where they are fearful, yes, but that does not mean that that action was the incorrect action to take. So that's the first portion I want to point out about the definition of fear, is that one, it's just an emotion. And two, the threat can be imagined. And I mean, I know that sounds very rudimentary and elementary, but when you think about that at a deeper level, you know, fear has stopped so many entrepreneurs, business people, speakers, influencers, etc., from taking action. And imagine the fact that the only reason why they did not take action was because of an imagined threat that may not have even existed in reality. So, that for me is one of my greatest fears, ironically enough, is not taking action because of something that wasn't even truly a threat to me. All right, so now time is money. We're all here alive. So why does any of this matter? Why are we talking about fear? Why am I making this video? Why are we here? And it's for two main reasons. Now, the first reason is that succumbing to fear in the first place will prevent you from taking action. And that in and of itself is reason enough. I mean, as we discussed previously, you can think about it in the entrepreneurial sense. Let's say, if if he was too fearful to fund and start SpaceX out of his own pockets, especially after the several failed launches prior to success, we would not have that great company that we have today. That's just one easy example. But not only in business, these things can be in your personal life. For example, talking to someone you're interested in, whether it's romantic or platonic. If you're at a networking event and you see someone, perhaps the president of an organization, and you want to strike up a conversation and put yourself in a position where you can get to know the president, get to be a potential leader or board member. If you let fear hold you back and you succumb to fear in that instance, you lose that opportunity. That's the primary reason you went to the event in the first place, right? Was to network and meet people. So talking to somebody is as an example of personal life. Having a tough conversation with someone you love. I mean, tough conversations are, per definition, tough conversations, but they are also frequently a very important conversation to have. Oftentimes they're tough because we're discussing things that really matter and not things like, how's the weather today? Additionally, establishing boundaries. Now, that's going to be a discussion for the future, but I wanted to touch upon it here because having boundaries in your personal life and also in business is of paramount importance. It's so important. Being a person that gets walked all over is not conducive, to success in any regard, whether professional or personal. But we're discussing it here in a personal sense. So once again, just because you are fearful of something does not mean you shouldn't do it. And now, succumbing to fear can prevent you from taking action in your business as well. So for example, not negotiating a better deal. So previously, I was the type of person that was very much a person who didn't kind of disrupt the status quo, so to speak. I remember a distinct example when I was in in high school, and I was about 14. It was in my history class, and we took an exam on the Scantron. Remember, guys, those little bubbles? You remember those days, right? Bubbling it in. Oh, those were the worst and the best of times, all in one. Anyway, so we had a Scantron, and the professor said, if the Scantron marked your answer incorrect, but you indeed did mark the correct bubble as we're going through reviewing it, raise your hand and let me know. And number 5, I remember it, I marked A. He said the answer was A, but I got my question marked wrong by the computer. And instead of raising my hand and saying, hey, I don't want this to be penalized for an answer that I was correct upon, I sat there and I was too fearful and too shy to say anything. Now, fast forward, about 10 years, I have a photo editor and I was able to get approximately a 30% discount by simply just asking. When he proposed his price, I said, hey, what do you think about making it this price instead? He was like, sounds fair. I was like, I didn't ask for a high enough discount. Regardless though, that's an example of how if you just simply ask, you never know how much better of a deal you can get. And over the course of an entire entrepreneurial career and journey, that can really add up. Another example is in sales, not asking for the order. If you are a salesperson or any person in general, not asking for what you want over the course of a lifetime perpetually will put you in a position where you are behind, and not necessarily behind relative to your contemporaries, but more so behind relative to your own potential and where you should be in life and where you would have been and the impact you would have had for yourself, your family, and the world at large had you simply had more bravery, had not succumbed to fear, and actually asked for the order. Or here's another example, not reinvesting into your own company to remain competitive. Now, especially post-COVID, right? A pure, honest to goodness example of a black swan event. How many entrepreneurs and business owners are now scared to reinvest funds back into their business, and they instead put it into their savings or put it into an investment portfolio or put it into their personal account, which is fine. But you do have to have a certain margin and a certain faith within your business to reinvest a large portion into it so that you can grow and scale. Because every single day, competitors are eating up market share, and new and upcoming startup companies are coming to take your market share, your money, your customers, etc. And in this case, if you are too fearful to pursue your entrepreneurial success over the long term, what can very easily happen is that the up and coming individuals can usurp the incumbents. So that's another example of how fear can actually be very detrimental to you and your business. So some more examples. And this is a bit more of a softer example because it may not be visible, but it's just as nefarious nonetheless. Your actions will be stifled and thus ineffectual. So a great example is in public speaking. If you are speaking in a public forum and you don't have confidence, you're fearful, your delivery may be off. You may sound nervous. Your speech and your cadence may be a bit stumbled or fumbled, and you may not be as charismatic as you would have otherwise been if you were in a more comfortable, stable state. And now we're going to discuss some techniques later on that you can use to kind of like bring your state of mind down and actually be able to move in a way that is stable despite being fearful, because fear is a very normal phenomenon. But that's an example of how it can affect you in other ways as well. Lack of energy. So physiologically, your sympathetic nervous system being in fight or flight chronically is very, 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 very fatiguing. That's the part of our body that was designed to run from wolves and to chase antelope to get food, not to, think in a boardroom and have creative ideas to propel our businesses forward. And it honestly uses a lot more energy to be in a fearful state than it does to be in a calm and rested state. And lastly, self-sabotage. So previously, I gave an example of how, as a business owner, if you do not have as much faith as is required in that time period to reinvest back into your business, what you may instead do is take it and put it elsewhere, which, ironically enough, will cause your business to be usurped by upstarts. And now the interesting thing here is that that's a form of self-sabotage, and it also manifests in other ways as well. But essentially, having fear and not having enough conviction and belief in yourself and what you're trying to pursue can cause you to take actions to make yourself fail, sometimes even before you start. If you say to yourself, I'll never become XYZ, then in truth, you will never become XYZ. And also less joy in what you do. Now, I left this for last because it's very important, because I do truly believe that in order to become successful at a grand scale at anything, you have to enjoy the process. And there are not many things in life that people enjoy while being fearful. Roller coasters may be an exception, but that's not really true fear. That's more of excitement and stimulation. But that's another example of how this is an important topic to discuss, the topic of fear, because it will rob your joy and make you, in addition to making you less effectual. So now all of this loops back into what we discussed previously, these negative feedback loops. You are fearful, you thus either don't start and you tell yourself, I'll never become XYZ and I can't do XYZ, or you do start and you are not full send, so to speak, and you don't put yourself in a position of success and leverage to be able to actually succeed over the long term because you're afraid of failure, thus you create it for yourself. And these examples, when you start to be aware of these phenomenon, especially the phenomenon of self-sabotage, you may start to witness it within your own behavior, but also it's a lot easier oftentimes to see it in the behavior of others, which is why accountability, having a good friend group and people around you who can call you out on your BS is of paramount importance. So we talked about the definition of fear, why it matters. We talked about macro concepts, but now nitty gritty, practical, what can we do about fear to make it so that we can be more effectual in our relationships, personal life, in our business, and in our joy? The first thing is perspective. So humans are incredibly resilient when they know what it is they should be expecting. This is from Alex Hormozi. And this is so true. As they say, the punch that hurts you the most is the one you don't see coming. Getting sucker punched, I've been sucker punched, sucks. Don't get sucker punched. So on the front end, realizing that, hey, before this live stream I'm going to do today, my first one ever, I'm going to be fearful. Being aware of things like that and knowing that you're going to have fear and being aware of it on the front end helps enduring it become 10 times easier. So essentially, clench your jaw and brace for the punch. Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, if you're fearful of it, it's probably going to be difficult. It doesn't mean, once again, you shouldn't do it, but you should just be aware on the front end that you are going to feel fear. And then you can, once again, prepare yourself ahead of time for your body's response to the fear. But here's the great thing about that, because with everything, there's a yin and yang, a dark, a light, and the glass is half full as well as half empty. The harder it is that whatever it is you're trying to do, oftentimes the greater the payoff, the greater the euphoria, the greater you feel. Some of the best times that I've ever felt in my entire life were after I accomplished something that was extremely difficult. I remember one example in particular, after my medical school entrance exam, that was about a 6-hour exam. I came out of there and I was basically like Ed from Ed, Ed and Eddie. I was a total oaf. But once I recovered my energy, I immediately was euphoric because I said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I performed well or not, but I felt great because I just accomplished a very difficult task. So now action steps part 2, perspective once again. And this one is one of my favorite ways to reframe anything. It's not that bad once you expand the time by 10 to 15 years. Honestly, anything that you're afraid of doing or pursuing in 10 years from now, it won't really be that bad. Even bankruptcy falls off your record after 7 years. So when you think about something that we go through every day, having a tough conversation, approaching someone you want to create a relationship with, whether it be platonic or otherwise, setting boundaries, making a new business initiative or innovation, etc. The fear that we're having about it, if you just take a step back and just say, hey, in 10 years from now, will this even really matter? Most of the time, the answer is no. It's often not that deep, and it won't have that much of an implication or bearing upon your life and your overall happiness. And sometimes just taking that step back, taking the pressure off, can make a world of difference in regards to how you feel and how you perform. In part 3, move, and move again. As I said before in a previous slide, just because you are fearful does not mean you shouldn't take action. And this exact concept is so important because oftentimes you'll find that as you go through the experience that you were fearful of, you start to feel more calm. You become more comfortable being uncomfortable. And an analogy that I like to use is that fear is like a pebble in your shoe. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to be conscientious of it every second, and doesn't mean that you have to succumb to it. You can simply choose to ignore it. And we've all have had a pebble in our shoes at one point or another. And I mean, yes, it's annoying, but it doesn't have to make us completely inept and ineffectual. And we have a bit of lag here. Sorry about that, guys. My computer is a bit old, and so sometimes it goes on the fritz. All right, where were we? From this slide. All right, pebble in the shoe. So much like a laggy computer, fear can be perceived as a pebble in the shoe. Okay, so where it's not, unfortunately, we're going and explaining and experiencing some technical difficulties here. All right, and we are back. So boom. So yep, pebble in the shoe. Just because you are feeling the experience of fear does not mean that you have to succumb to it. You can continue to move forward in spite of that experience that you're feeling emotionally. So this concept is one of my favorite concepts of all time. The actions that you take shape who you are. Just ship it. So as humans, we have 2 parts of our brain. We have the inner self, how we perceive ourselves, and the outer, how others perceive us. And oftentimes what occurs is there's an inner shift within our own consciousness. So for example, if you perceive yourself as a writer, someone who's outgoing, someone who's good at public speaking, you then begin to take the actions of writing, public speaking, being more outgoing. And then you then begin to be perceived by the outside world as a person that exhibits those characteristics. But what's interesting, and studies have shown this to be true, that if you start to take the action and just do the action, you start to write the blog posts and the articles, you start to make the videos, you start speaking, you then begin to think of yourself as oh, well, I am a writer, I am a speaker, I am a producer of content, etc. So oftentimes what happens first is that we have imposter syndrome. I can't do XYZ because I'm not that person. But what you'll find is as you begin to do these things, you then begin to perceive yourself as that person, which makes it easier to take which makes it easier to take subsequent action. And why that's really important is because of the fact that in regards to fear, it's really easy to let fear stop you from taking that first step. But what you'll find is after taking that first initial step, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh step becomes 10 times easier. So whatever it may be that you're trying to achieve, simply take the first step and you'll find it be a lot easier on the way. I mean, myself, I'm doing these live streams to be a personal and a actual case study of that. You know, this live stream is my first one ever, and even through this PowerPoint, we've experienced difficulties, bumps in the road, etc. But yet here I am still taking these steps so that I can be an inspiration for the subsequent generations of entrepreneurs and business owners and people who are they themselves trying to break free of fear and take that next step. So essentially, that's kind of a bit of an introductory portion into my journey. So as I mentioned, my name is Josue Deloyer. I'm a Haitian American entrepreneur, and the industry that I'm in right now is financial services, particularly insurance. So my macro plan over the next 10 years is to begin the process. There is an Amber Alert. Oh my, that is intense. All right, is to begin the process of doing mergers and acquisitions within the insurance industry. I've become aware of mergers and acquisition as a business model through several entrepreneurs such as Carl Pierre and Dan Pena, and just along with like a copious amounts of Googling. And basically within, that methodology of seller financing a business, acquiring it through an SBA, a small business association loan, etc., and doing that methodology to allow oneself to buy an insurance company, place it underneath the holding company, and repeat that process to allow your holding company's revenue to equate to the sum of the individual companies within it is a great way to generate true massive amounts of generational wealth for oneself. So that's kind of like what I plan to do. Now, for me, especially as someone who's younger, I'm 27 right now, I am trying to document that process so that, one, I'm held accountable. Two, it makes it easier for the next generation of entrepreneurs to see that this can be done. Not to be as so bold as to aspire to be Mark Zuckerberg, but for example, let's say that he documented his process of building Facebook. How invaluable would that be for all of us entrepreneurs who are coming, after him? Because we have a chance to see the path that he paved, in addition to seeing the struggles that he faced in real time. So that's kind of my why I'm doing this live stream, as well as to create a body of work that can outlast myself to once again help subsequent generations. So that brings us to the Q&A portion of the live stream. Once again, thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate all you guys who are here right now. And yeah, the floor is now open for any questions you may have. If there are no questions, we can go ahead and end it. But I also do have some other points I want to go ahead and touch upon based upon some Google search trends in regards to what are some of the most commonly asked questions about fear, mindset, entrepreneurship, etc. So if you guys have any questions, let's go ahead and type them up. We're currently at 8:23, so I went ahead and rambled for about 20 minutes. Good God. Okay, great question. Michael Kardashian asked, actually, we can actually show this on the screen. Hey, amazing. I'm getting so good at this. So what are some of the things that I fear personally? Oh, you know what? Actually, we can go ahead and hit the switch. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. I want to also give you guys a nice visual experience as well. Perfect. So some of the things that I fear personally, this is a great question. So I'm going to go ahead and start from the top so I can go ahead and make this little clip. So Michael Kardashian asked, what are some things that you fear personally? Ironically enough, the judgment and the perception of others. So why I say that's ironic is because here I am starting a full-blown live stream of myself talking about my business, my aspirations, and my philosophies upon mindset. And another reason why I'm doing this is because I want to punch fear in the face so that I can become the type of person I aspire to be. I want to be a business owner that is able to run a multi-million dollar business. And how can I do that if I'm too scared to post or go live? I mean, we're talking about stakes of me going bankrupt, having employees, hundreds of them, whose livelihood depend on me. If I can't do something as simple as have a live stream and put myself out there in a social sense, I have no business doing that in an entrepreneurial sense. So yeah, that's one of the things I fear personally, is the public perception and ridicule of others. And that's why I'm doing this. Great question. Are there any other questions popping up? While you guys are thinking, I'll go ahead and answer a question that I got asked in a more private setting. And that's a question of, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? So I have many people. I did neuroscience research before I started becoming an entrepreneur, and I have several friends who want to create content around mental health and neuroscience. And these individuals have at least a master's degree. Some of them have their PhD, and they feel as if they don't have the right, so to speak, to talk about certain things because they haven't practiced for nigh a decade. And something that one of my friends, Joe Dragoni, said that was super insightful was that simply because of who you are, how you look, how you sound, how you talk, etc., you have a natural market within yourself. So simply because someone else may have more experience does not mean they're the person that's going to be able to impact the listener the best. And at the end of the day, I mean, we can talk about embarrassment, qualifications, degrees, etc. You know, the most important thing is the effect that you have on somebody. I would rather have someone who's able to be effectual without a degree than someone who has 10 degrees but cannot create lasting change within a client or individual. So that's just a little perspective on that in regards to imposter syndrome. And for those of you who don't know, imposter syndrome is the phenomenon and the feeling that someone has where they feel as if they are an imposter when they are talking about things, particularly in the business environment, educational spheres. So yeah, we'll go ahead and close this up in about 3 minutes if there are no further questions. All right, looks like we don't have any other further questions. I'm just going to give one final point that has been super helpful for me on my journey. So I was going through a period of time where I wasn't sure exactly what I want to do, because as many entrepreneurs, I'm multi-passionate. I want to do things with mental health. I have a great interest in style and fashion. I have I'm falling in love with content production, and I was struggling with, where do I go and how do I start? And one of my friends was actually telling me that, I need to focus on what it is my true goal is. And my personal goal is to impact those with mental illness and mental health. And that friend was actually my clinician, actually, who's over there in the chat box. And he said, well, hey, bro, your primary goal would be best served in what way? Through content production, through business? What would it be? And essentially it ended up being through business. And that's another reason why I'm documenting my journey. I'm not only producing content in the niche, of mindset and mental health, but also showing my business journey, because that is actually my grand goal, is to be able to use business as a vehicle to help those with mental illness as well as their families, and to leave a lasting impact that will live beyond me. So yeah. So guys, that does go ahead and wrap up our first ever Sunday with Josue live stream. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I was extremely nervous. I was shaking and trembling. It was terrible. But I'm super glad I did this. And I'm super excited to come back again next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern time with even higher production value for you guys. Hopefully I'll have a computer or a camera that doesn't like glitch out halfway through. But thank you guys once again so much for coming. I love you all. And I'm pumped to keep giving you guys value and to document my journey. So hopefully when I come back here next week, I'll have a Lambo and be like, hey guys, I made it. Anyway, love you guys all. See you guys soon. Peace.